Hello, listeners. Welcome back to the Startup Catalyst. Special guest today is our mentor, Chitra Singh. She's got a cherished background both in the corporate world as well as in the startup industry. Uh, it's a pleasure to have you on board, Chitra.
Thank you so much for inviting me again. Always a pleasure to be on your podcasts.
Great. So, the focus for the Startup Catalyst is for allowing our mentors to get a better visibility into your background and your experience as a mentor so that they can try and relate to their part of their own experiences where they think they would be able to benefit. So, why just walk us through what's been your corporate career and your entrepreneurship and startup mentorship career so far so we can take it forward from there.
Right. So to talk about my journey, it's divided into two phases, as you know. The first was the corporate phase, which I started as a medical rep with Johnson and Johnson. And very interestingly, I learned a lot about selling in those times. They were hard, but everything I learned about selling were in those initial few years, including the rigor, the execution, the discipline of selling. After that, I joined banking sales, which was not easier, I would say, because it's an intangible product and requires a lot of trust and credibility to sell. I spent 25 plus years in banking sales, leading sales teams across India in some of the largest banks of India, like Kotak and ICICI. But after 25 years, I did feel that there was some kind of gap, and I felt that I'm doing more of the same things and wanted to do something more meaningful. And that's when I took a break and went on to the second phase of my journey, which was when I started a community for women, which is India's only exclusive sales community called Saleswomentoring. The purpose of the community is to encourage and enable women in sales and business, including founders, business owners, solopreneurs, etc., to succeed in selling. So as you know, women are underrepresented both as founders and in sales as sales professionals. And the whole idea of the community is to provide a supportive ecosystem for the women founders, business owners, as well as women sales professionals. From here, I also realized that, I was being quite partial towards women. And there were some organizations like Wadhwani and NASSCOM which approached me to start mentoring other startups too. And I started mentoring everybody, women, men, etc. And during this journey, I realized that this is the most meaningful and fulfilling part, to give back whatever I have learned in sales, my experience, my knowledge to startups, because the biggest problem they struggle with is scale. Especially since they are founder led businesses and the founder is doing the selling, they find it hard, difficult, and challenging. And I started mentoring them on their various sales challenges. And thus, this journey started. I'm
Got
still doing the same thing, as you know, and also mentoring with you. Recently, I have signed up with you as a mentor.
No, that's fantastic. And I think one thing which strikes me as very particular as far as your experience is the rich corporate experience you had before you got into the startup world yourself. Does a strong background in corporates, uh, does it really help to become an entrepreneur? Or do you think you could have done this job even without that?
It cuts both ways. We could see that I launched my business or my community after 50. So some would say I have lost time, and some would look at it as I have gained experience and knowledge. So some of the mistakes which most startup owners make, which is focusing too much on the product, focusing too much on R&D and tech, I did not make, and trying to scale up too quickly, because I knew through my experience that I should build a stable foundation first and then go on to hiring more people and then go on to increasing costs and then go on to really increasing scale. So initially it was more organic growth. I did not spend too much. I kept it lean purposefully, and then went on to grow. These mistakes, when you're young and inexperienced, you tend to make, and you think scale is everything and top line is everything, while margins are eroding, profit is eroding, and the bottom line is bleeding. So that focus and that wisdom I had because of my age. And so I do think I'm quite happy that I took this plunge later in life.
Interesting. The other aspect is, of course, while you're mentoring women in sales, you're obviously focusing on both women who are in large enterprises versus women who are in startups. And my personal experience tells me a bulk of work which women entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs do is anyway sales, right?
Right.
So does it does it become easier for a woman to be an entrepreneur versus being in a large organization?
I wouldn't say it's easier or more difficult. Both have their own challenges. And the fact is that we are living in a society which is biased. And we are living in a society, in a world, I would say, not only society, it's across the world where women are underrepresented, both in business as well as in the workplace. Across the world, if you look at female workforce participation, the average is about 50%. But in India, urban female workforce participation is just about 15%. So the fact is, we are underrepresented, we are underpaid, and we are undervalued at the workplace and in founding circles, because less than 1% of VC funding goes to women led companies, purely women led companies, where a woman is not a founder, but she is the sole founder. So if less than 1% of the VC funding is going here, you can imagine that we can't scale and we can't grow. So the biases which persist about women not being ambitious, women not having aspirations, women not being able to balance work and home and family responsibilities, women being burdened with a lion's share of the family responsibilities, these persist. Maybe more so in our cultural context and the South Asian cultural context than maybe in the Western world, but it persists everywhere. So it is equally difficult for a woman to succeed in a world which is where the rules are designed by men for men. It's only recently, I would say in the last 10-15 years, that women have really started stepping into leadership roles in corporate, as well as into the founding world.
No, the
And
reason I
access
asked
to
that,
funding, not being easy doesn't make it any uh, more easy for women. It just makes it more challenging.
yeah, the reason I asked that is because in the corporate environment, and I don't have to go beyond much beyond you yourself in terms of a lot of problems at the workplace for a woman are because of the boss or the manager or the senior management, which might not be amenable for the way the woman wants to work, which gets completely removed in a startup. Right? You are your own boss. If you don't feel like working, don't feel like going to office, your health doesn't support you today, you can take a back seat. But of course, the work pressure of an entrepreneur is a definitely different one, but it's still purely self-driven. So that's why I asked. I mean, would a woman who's really smart and aggressive and really wants to, push the boundaries, push the limits to do what she wants to, is she better off being an entrepreneur rather than being the corporate environment?
It's a very personal decision. Yes, there is more flexibility, but now I would say even in the corporate world, there is more flexibility with work from home and with when we started, there were no mobiles, there were no laptops, there was nothing. You have to be in the office and that's it. Uh, on the flip side for a founder is though she has flexibility, and I'm saying she because you're asking about women founders.
Yeah.
But there is also this switch which is on 24 by 7, and the buck stops with you. In the corporate world, you can delegate. You have a team, you have a manager whom you can ask for guidance. Here you're alone, and it's a very lonely ride and a lonely world. And you've got to unlearn a lot of things which you've learned in the corporate. And there is no ecosystem to kind of support you and protect you and lift you. If I want to do a marketing campaign, I have to set it up myself. If I want to set up my profile in Google Ads, I have to do it myself. If I want to create a reel, I have to do it myself. Of course, I can have if I hire a team, I'm not utilizing them full time and I'm increasing my costs. Whereas if I have freelancers, I will know that they're not dedicated to me and my deadlines sometimes slip because of the fact that the freelancers have multiple commitments. So there are pros and cons, but yes, flexibility is one of the biggest pros for being a founder. And when you're a young mother or when you're having your own family to run, this kind of flexibility does help you to do meaningful work and at the same time give time to your family, whereas those may not be possible in a corporate because you're bound by corporate rules. You have to go to office on certain days, you have several other stakeholders. Here you're answerable to yourself, maybe to the directors if you're a private limited, or your partners if it's a partnership, and of course your employees, because you need to pay salaries every month, and that's one of the biggest stresses, that on the first of the month, am I running a business which is profitable enough to pay the salaries and still have some money left over to run a business and scale it.
Got it. Got it. What's been your own experience dealing with startup founders as a mentor, as a friend? How's the market ecosystem looking like? What sectors have you observed have been more beneficial? And this again is not a gender specific question. It's
Yes,
across
yes.
the board. What's been your experience of the ecosystem as a whole?
My experience has been that most of the startup founders make similar mistakes, which is the first thing is they don't focus on selling. They think selling is something which is messy, which is dirty. Maybe I don't want to focus on selling. And they leave it to someone else. They delegate it to someone else. Whereas the founder is the best brand ambassador for the product, and founder-led sales are the best. The first 20 customers have to be onboarded by the founder himself or herself. So that's when you get the real pulse of the market and your customers. So they spend a lot of time in pilots. They spend a lot of time in product, in R&D, in tech, but very little time getting to know customers and having real customer conversations. So I would say that for every product feature that you introduce, you must have 10 real customer conversations so that your insights come straight from the customer. And that's what will lead to better products and better experiences for the customer. So this is one of the biggest mistakes I see, that founders don't drive sales, with the result that they don't have a repeatable, consistent process which they can translate and pass on to a team which they hire later. And the team or the sales head whom they hire is not able to then give them a lot of bullshit about the market, because they know what is happening, they know what competition is doing, they are getting feedback from the customer. This is the single biggest mistake I see. The second mistake I see is that they don't focus on innovation, which is looking at markets differently, looking at customer segments differently, because innovation does not always need to be a very, very big breakthrough. It can be small things which you change, which make the customer experience simpler, better, faster. For example, a new distribution channel, or for example, a faster onboarding experience, and so on. So these innovations, they need to focus on constantly and create a culture in which people are coming up with these kind of ideas because they feel like they are part owners of the business. Because when ideas stop flowing, the business becomes stagnant. So creating a culture of trust, creating a culture of innovation, giving people the freedom to experiment and fail, these are cultures which founders don't focus on. They're just into scale, 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 and the top line, while not focusing on innovation, building a culture of trust, building a culture where creativity flourishes. And there's no blame game. Instead, there is learning from failure. So your failures can be lessons. And most people celebrate victories. So they have a leaderboard, they have win board, and they share employee of the month, win of the month. But nobody looks at lessons learned from failure of the month. So I would say maintain a failure diary also, and lessons learned, not to fix the blame or fix the person, but to fix the problem. And that is something which most people don't focus on. So sales is one thing, excessive focus on product R&D, but not enough on selling and real customer conversations. Excessive focus on scaling and top line at the cost of innovation, creativity, and ideation. These are two mistakes I've seen a lot founders doing. The third and the fourth are they are not clear about who they are selling to. Their ICP itself is not clear. So they're trying to sell everything to everybody, and then you know what happens, right? You end up selling nothing to anybody. So the clearer, your sharper your focus is on who you're selling to, then the what and how flow from that. That what will you do to reach them, and so on. What is their problem? How can you solve it better? And the
Yeah.
fourth thing, which I would say, is they are not clear on the unique value proposition. A lot of people confuse USP, UVP, and they think that feature-led selling is what will win them the customer. But it's not feature, it's value. And for that, you have to be clear about your unique value proposition, which has to be from the point of view of the customer. It has to be valuable to the customer. It has to be relevant. It has to be differentiated. And you have to be able to offer proof. And this is something which they spend very, very less time on. If you can't articulate your unique value in one sentence, less than 200 words, in 30 to 60 seconds, then you don't have a value proposition. And if you can't tell your story in less than 30 seconds, which will prove that you offer value to the customer, then you don't have a value proposition at all. So these are the four things I feel: that no clarity on your UVP, no clarity on your ICP, and not focusing on sales, not focusing on creating a culture of innovation and trust and creativity. These are the four mistakes I've seen them making again and again.
No, I think very well structured response. I think these are definitely issues which I have also observed from time to
Yeah.
time. Having said that, I think there is a big generational gap between you and typically the founders. You must be interacting with a lot of younger founders as well.
Yes.
We tend to criticize younger founders first up because we feel that, oh, they don't have patience, they don't want to listen, they are too focused on digital thing. Any or few positives that you notice among the millennials and the Gen Zs, which you think has been great source of learning for you?
Yes, they're focused on technology, I would say. They are so clued in and they know which are the tools to use. They know which are they know how to use Chat GPT. They know how to use uh, all the latest, whether it is Instagram Reels or whether it is something else. They are completely clued into technology. And I think we took very slowly to technology. It took me a long time to get comfortable with Instagram. I thought if I'm on LinkedIn, it's, good enough. But they do experiment. They do take risks. Uh, they do. They do take difficult paths, which we would not take because we think that they are going to be very, very risky.
Hmm.
They are better at networking, I would say, than we were. We were like all the time work, 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 keep your head down and continue to work. They know the importance of networking and social capital. They know the importance of being on social media and promoting your company on social media. You see so many founders and startup owners, on the road saying, I'm offering this t-shirt, and you see so many of these reels, and I would say they are very well made. Their media presence or social media presence is striking and really good. And I don't think we are still comfortable, on social media making reels or chasing people on the street and saying, so what is your view on this, etc. We wouldn't be still comfortable. So I would say their adoption of technology, their adoption of tools which make work more productive and efficient and save time, including say a Chat GPT. Their openness to new technology, and also their comfort with social media. These
Yeah.
are really things which their ability to take risks is another, because they are younger, they are able to take risks because they know that they have time on their side. We probably will not take some of those risks. It has a flip side too, but it is certainly admirable the kind of zeal and risk taking ability they come up with, come to me with.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think as far as usage of technology is concerned, usage of technology to enhance productivity for marketing, for bigger outreach, yes, hands-on, I agree with you. But I think somewhere where they kind of miss out is trying to overuse technology to gain knowledge.
Simplify, yeah. Or to say,
They are too much dependent on reels or digital mediums to enhance their knowledge. They ignore the real life experiences, talking to people, reading books.
so
Uh,
now you're criticizing them.
I
We
am. I am.
decided that we are
So,
not supposed to
so I'm
criticize.
saying, you can't be using technology. I mean, you can't be curating out only the positives of technology and ignore the downside. And I think that drawing that balance and saying, okay, where is technology supporting versus where it's tracking down? Because bulk of the problem is there only, right? In name of creating reels and creating a lot of content, their overall presence on digital media is too high compared to what it ideally should be. I think drawing that line is, and I think that's where mentors come in, right? That's where,
Absolutely. We wouldn't have a job if they knew all this, right? So,
yeah,
because they are risk takers and because they are technology friendly and so on,
yeah,
they are founders at such an early age. But because they lack wisdom and experience and real world lived experience,
yeah,
that is why we are there to offer them that. So, the
yeah,
balance of the two is
yeah.
what brings alignment.
And I think that's what causes the burnout, right? Because they're overindulging as far as technology is concerned, and they tend to
That's
burn
right.
out much faster than what typically they would have expected as well. Staying on technology, what's been your read as far as I mean, it's been what, 3 years now since ChatGPT made a debut, right? So is AI in a nutshell has had more positives for startup founders or negatives?
I would say positives because it does save time, bring in more efficiency, provided it is used correctly. So AI cannot become the master and you the servant, like you rightly said earlier. Instead, we must learn to master AI in order to lead to outcomes which are valuable to the customer. So AI cannot be used as a good to have or a buzzword or because everyone else is using it. AI should be used to drive measurable outcomes
Hmm.
which benefit the customer. Like I already mentioned, faster onboarding, better customer insights. These are the kind of things which will improve customer experience. And when AI is used for that, then I think it is definitely a plus.
Hmm.
But when AI is overused and we are dependent on it for everything, including churning out content or including, the basic ideation, then it becomes a bane rather than a boon.
That's true.
I can give you one example.
Yeah.
Earlier, I would spend hours on researching for any corporate proposal and presentation. Hours on researching competitor websites, finding out their strategies, and so on. Now that is done in 10 minutes. So similarly, whether it's a sales rep or a founder, they can do market research, competitive research, and perplexity in a matter of 10-15 minutes, or even on ChatGPT in a matter of 10 minutes. So
Yeah.
if they can put in the competitor names and websites and say, just let me know a brief summary of their presence, their operations, and what has been their strategy, to pull out all the information and give you a comparison table also. So that saves time and energy for founders as well as sales professionals.
Got it. Got it.
So use the correct way, AI helps.
That makes sense.
Right.
Coming down to sectors, right? Which are the sectors where you are seeing a larger success rate for startups versus the sectors which are not very cool right now, if you look at 2026?
So I would say definitely the AI-led startups are one. Secondly, I would say that that the payment startups or the fintech startups, these are doing well again because UPI has taken off in a big way, and we all know that digital payments are the future. So these are startups which are doing well. And if I were to put it broadly, any startup which addresses a real customer product, the real customer problem, is the one which will succeed in the market. So when you do your research well and you've done your 100, 200, 300 surveys, and you know that a real problem exists and there is a real market for that problem, it's not only your problem or the problem of a small subset of the population. It is a problem where the market is huge and the opportunity is huge. Whenever a startup ventures into that, it and provides solutions to real world problems, that that kind of startup succeeds. And that's why I'm quite excited about women entering, because these problems were earlier just ignored because men did not know that the problems which women face do exist. For example, there are startups which are focusing on female hygiene, female safety. They are focusing on menopause, products for menopause, and these issues were not even highlighted earlier because a man did not even think of it this way. So now women startups, led startups, are focusing on these problems because they see a real market and real opportunity there. And these are the changes which I think are really, really exciting.
You'd like to talk about any of your mentorship experience, any startup that you work with, and where they are, what's been the transformation you noticed. It's a good chance for bringing up those startups and talk about them. Uh,
Yeah. So I have a startup I wouldn't name, where they were getting plenty of meetings. They had a workflow automation software, and they were having plenty of meetings, but they did not have any conversions. So I went into deeply into their processes. I went deeply into their customer meetings, and then I realized that while they were focusing on the number of meetings, they were not focusing on stage-wise conversions. So they didn't have a CRM in place. They didn't have they were not tracking stage-wise conversions. They didn't have a weekly follow-up cadence. They did not have rigor in terms of tracking every stage. They were also not clear on the ICP, like I had mentioned right in the beginning. So they were addressing 4 or 5 industries, whereas we brought it down to only one industry. So it was a focused niche, which allowed us to have more focused messaging, which resonated with the target audience because they felt, okay, this solution is for me and this is an exact fit for me. And when they feel like that, the probability of buying is much more. So the first thing we fixed was the ICP. The second thing we fixed was the messaging, which was very, very relevant to the ICP and valuable to the ICP. The third thing we fixed was that they did not have enough of rigor and discipline in terms of follow-up and tracking and meetings. So I asked them to introduce a CRM, made the sales reps put their meetings and the follow-ups in the CRMs and tracked stage-wise conversion so that we could find out where in the pipeline the leads were getting stuck. And lastly, the founder himself started doing these reviews, which were earlier being done by someone else, which was what I was talking about, founder-led sales teams. So after fixing these 4 issues, we found that there was a 30% increase in the conversions. And this, I think, was a huge success story because initially they were focusing on the wrong things, which was just the activities, how many meetings and so on. They were not focusing on the result. There are others who do the opposite, who just focus on, how many closures, and they don't focus on the activities. These were the reverse problem, where they were focusing on the activity and they were happy if there were more meetings, but it was not leading to conversions because of inefficient pipeline management and vague definition of ICP and the message.
That's interesting. Just thinking aloud in terms of the kind of profile that you have today, where you're actually running a startup yourself, but the day job in running that startup involves working with other startup founders and helping them become successful, which in turn helps your startup become successful. Do you think this is a practice which has a larger meaning under a large brand or a large umbrella? Do you think if you are part of, let's say, a Microsoft startup initiative, you probably would have succeeded a lot more, and the whole challenge of running the dhanda would not have kind of pulled you down or dragged your time down?
Yeah, I think having a big brand name is definitely good. And if you're part of a venture like Microsoft, etc., you can focus more on what you're doing, which is mentorship and guidance. Now I have a job which is running my own startup at the same time mentorship, but it's still fulfilling because you give back. You give back and you learn from them as much as they learn from you. So there's reverse mentoring too. And so it is, I would say, really fulfilling, sometimes challenging in terms of time, but fulfilling because you're able to give back and you're able to learn a lot even from these youngsters.
Your response is very important because a lot of our incubatees are the early stage, pre-growth stage, seed stage. And the challenge of running the business, the day-to-day challenges, which kind of drag your momentum down despite the highs that you get, can really be unnerving. Mental health issues keep popping up. People tend to fold up much earlier than what they would have probably expected themselves to. More on the closing front, what is the kind of advice that you would want to give from a resilience perspective? How do you ensure that you avoid a mental breakdown when running a startup?
So the biggest thing is to know your why. Like Simon Sinek says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, right? So you have to have your story very, very clearly
Hmm.
uh, set out. You have to have clarity on that because you can't outsource clarity. A mentor can tell you the path, but they can't do it for you, right? So
Yeah, true.
many
That's
of
right.
them come to me and say, "Can you give me a pitch? Can you give me a collateral for my sales calls? Can you tell me what script I should use?" I tell them I can do all that, but if I do all that, you will not know what you're doing, and so
Hmm.
you can't outsource uh, clarity. You can't outsource everything to a mentor. So you
Hmm.
start with your why. Why am I doing what I'm doing? And if you're clear on your why, then it becomes a purpose or your North Star, and it actually lights you up in times which are darkest because you know why you're doing this. I will give you an example because when I feel that no, women are not really interested in selling, and maybe the representation of women in selling is less, or even founders are not interested because it is really very difficult, it's male dominated. Sometimes you feel, yeah, it's not really what women want to do. And that's when a success story like this comes in, some woman who's got who's made those 10 prospecting calls and got 4 meetings out of that. Or there is a founder who comes back and says, I closed my first big deal. And then you feel that, yes, I'm on the right path. So these light up your path and prevent you from giving up. So always be clear about your why. I know I started this because I wanted to help more women to succeed in selling and to scale their businesses. And now men too, through my mentorship with various initiatives. And when I see these startups succeeding, then I know that I'm on the right path. So, rigor, discipline, execution, and focus. When you do all these every single day consistently, you will see the results. Atomic Habits, I'm sure you've read, James Clear said, small incremental improvements every day, even a 1% improvement in one day can lead to compounding outcomes which you could not even imagine. So
Yeah.
don't try to do everything and be everything, sell to everyone all at once. It's not possible. Do small things, break it up into small steps, and reward yourself for achieving each of these steps along the way. We don't need big breakthroughs and big launches in order to feel we've succeeded, right? We
Yeah.
need to
Yeah.
address the steps along the way too and reward ourselves for it and tell ourselves that we are going on the right path. That way, I keep myself motivated because I know that I know my why. And why am I here? To help founders, women and men, to succeed and scale their business. And when I see this happening, I know I am on the right path. Similarly, with them, their why has to be very clear. The story of why they started this business and their purpose has to be very clear. And the second is, of course, which I've already mentioned multiple times, that if you have clarity on who you're selling to, who is your ICP, what is the problem you're addressing, how are they solving it at present, how can you solve it better than anybody else? And then the last is, how do you reach them and what do you say to them? When you have answers to these questions and you write them down, this is the first thing I make every founder do. First, write your why and then start with who, what is the problem, how are they solving it, which is very important, and how can you solve it better than anyone else in the market. If you can't say that in 30 to 60 seconds, you don't have a pitch and you don't have anything to talk to the customer about. And then, of course, everything else flows from there. How will you reach them and what will you say to them? Because once you understand the problem and your UVP, how you can solve it, then you are clear on why you're in this business and what you should be doing in this business. Often, ambiguity, vagueness, unstructured thinking, ad hocism, this is what leads people to give up. But it is boring. Consistently, you've got to do the same things, make those 10 prospecting calls, talk to those 10 customers. So it is boring. And
Yeah.
consistency many times is very, very boring. But that's how you build something which is real and which lasts. You know, you and I are both very health conscious. And we know that you need to exercise every single day to build the foundation of your health. And similarly, you need to do things which are good for your business every single day in order to build a business which lasts.
Yeah. That makes sense. I know you love reading books. Any recommended books for startup founders?
I already talked about one, Atomic Habits,
Yeah.
which I'm very, very influenced by because I do feel that everybody tries to, become this unicorn and this known name overnight, and it doesn't really happen. So small incremental improvements every single day. That's what I believe in. So Atomic Habits is one I would definitely say, and the other one is on negotiation because that's where I've seen a lot of founders uh, flounder.
Yeah.
Founders flounder, yeah. So that talks about a lot of things, but just to say it very succinctly, I would say that you need to ask better questions than your competition. So that's the seller who wins. The seller who wins asks better questions than their competition. That's what Chris Voss says. And we often think negotiation means getting the better of the other party, but it does not mean getting the better of the other party. It means asking the right questions which uncover uh, what will help you move forward in the conversation. And also using tactics like mirroring, labeling,
Yeah.
asking how, what questions, and understanding that people often say no because it is safer. You need to uncover the reason behind the no. Also, bring up the negatives even before the customer brings up, like the elephant in the room. Maybe I am too new. You think I am too new in the market. Maybe I think you think that I don't have enough experience in the market. It's better bring that up right in the beginning so that they don't bring it up as an objection later.
Yeah.
Getting them to say that is right instead of you're right. Because when they say you are right, they're just saying it to be polite or they're just saying it because they want to end the conversation. But when they say that's right, that's the moment when they believe, yeah, that's right. That's how I feel. That's when you know that you've got the deal, right? And last thing which he said was, I mean, which I want to say here is that he's talking about split the difference because the book is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. And people think that, this Mandavli compromise is a good way to close a deal. It's not, because compromises are often suboptimal and both parties end up feeling cheated and they feel that they could have done better. So, therefore, compromise is not the best option at all. I think this was one of the books which I read, which completely opened up my mind, along with James Clear's Atomic Habits, who says that if you want to build good habits, you need to make them easy. You need to make them attractive. You need to make them satisfying and obvious. And For bad habits, it's the reverse, right? Make them difficult, make them not so attractive, and so on. Uh, don't have them in front of you. And I can give you an example for that. Unhealthy snacks like chips and kurkure, I don't keep in my house at all. So it's very difficult for me to develop a habit of eating kurkure. Whereas I do keep protein and I do keep low fat paneer, etc. in my house. So I eat healthy because that's what is in front of me, that's what is easy, and that's what is obvious. And now it is satisfying too. So, um, in fact, if you look at health and fitness, and if you look at the founding world, the discipline and the rigor and the consistency required is what we need to mirror even in our founder's journey.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
And I'm sure you understand because you're on the same health journey as me. Sometimes it is boring. Sometimes your mind wants to give up. Sometimes, the body is paining, but I say don't give up. If it's paining, don't give up when you're done. So
Yeah,
similarly,
yeah,
just because of small challenges along the way, we can't give up. If our why is clear and our purpose is clear, we
yeah,
give up when we've done with doing everything possible
yeah,
to do what it takes to succeed in business.
yeah. No, I think the cyclical debate between body and mind, whether the mind is driving the body or vice versa, is everlasting simply because many times I feel that if I'm healthy, then I can think correctly. And
Right.
many times, if I can think correctly, then I can do what my health or my body requires, right? So it's cyclical, but yes, net both of them are important, right? You can't be thinking that you're doing enough for your mind and get into unhealthy habits which are detrimental for your body, because sooner or later the body will catch up, and regardless of whatever you think how smart you are, but your body will give in, and once it gives in, then there's very little that you'll be able to do as well. For the younger audience which doesn't read books, any movie or OTT that you recommend as highly inspirational?
I don't watch much of OTTs,
Hmm.
but I think I rely more on books.
Hmm.
I don't watch too much of Netflix. Whatever I watch is mostly entertainment value, not
You can look for meaning in
education.
entertainment also, like movies like ZNMD has, or Life is Beautiful, or
My all-time favorite
it's-
movie is Dawn. I use a lot of the clippings from Dawn for my negotiation as well as my other art of asking questions, art of negotiation. I use a lot of that because the way in which in Dawn there is a scene in which the police inspector tries to convince the Dawn, the fake Dawn, to step into the place of the real Dawn, right? Even though it is fraught with danger and risks, and maybe he gets found out and maybe he loses his life, the way the inspector convinces him and negotiates with him, and finally they arrive at a settlement is actually one of the master classes in win-win negotiation because both win here. And he, the how what questioning, which Chris Voss talks about, he uncovers the real concern, which is the kids. He doesn't want the kids to suffer or not have anybody to look after them. And the inspector promises to look after the children. So Dawn is one, and in which there are several lessons. And I think you're right that if we are looking for lessons, we look for it everywhere.
yeah,
But I don't like Wolf of Wall Street, etc., etc. They because they are supposed to be classics, but they propagate a method of selling which I don't think is ethical. It's more manipulative. Similarly, Rocket Singh is very popularly known as a sales movie, but he says कि तुम क्या करोगे? I have 38%. मैं सेल्स पर्सन बनूंगा. अरे जिसके पास 38% है वो थोड़ी सेल्स पर्सन. We have brains. So some of the things which they say I don't agree with. So these are movies I wouldn't recommend. But
interesting.
yeah, I did learn a lot from movies like Dawn. And even there was a movie, Fir Hera Fairy, in which this person keeps asking so many questions. In the art of asking questions and probing, I tell them don't ask questions like this so that the customer falls, unconscious or gets so irritated that he or she walks away. So I
Yeah,
use Bollywood films a lot in order to drive points home because we identify in our culture with music and Bollywood.
yeah,
So I do. In fact, my negotiation styles, uh, I use Bollywood songs. Uh, win lose, I lose, you win. Acha ji main hari, chalo maan jao na. I use that song. Yeah, so I use that a lot. And then I win, you lose.
I hope you get to see the male version of that, because otherwise it would be like, why is the woman always losing?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I do talk about that since I am a feminist anyway. The world is not really equal for women. So I am a feminist and I do talk a lot about that and say that it should not be always this way. It should actually be a win-win. Uh, but I use that song
Very interesting.
for making them understand the point.
Yeah. So on that musical note, and the learning that even a movie like Dawn can teach you negotiation. Thank you very much, Sitra. It's been a wonderful experience probing you further and understanding better about your journey and your experience. And I'm sure the incubatees and the startup founders will also benefit from that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.